Welcome to the What Now podcast, where we document our journey through chiropractic. Our goal is to give you, the new chiropractor, our firsthand experience in running a principled, cash-based practice right out of school. Join us as we bring you real perspective, lessons learned, and the leading names in the profession as we build the practices of our dreams. Yo, everybody. What is up? Welcome back to another episode of the What Now podcast. Spencer back here with Empower Chiropractic. We got Zach in the studio. What's up, man?
In the booth. Pretty good. Post-Christmas. Enjoying it.
Yes. Merry Christmas to all of our listeners. Happy New Year. Happy holidays, whatever you guys celebrate. I'm assuming it's
Valentine's,
Christmas.
Easter,
All of it.
4th of July. We'll just get them all out of the gate.
Hanukkah.
Yep,
Yeah.
Hanukkah.
So we're super
sure.
excited for you guys today. This is an episode I feel like has been a long time coming. We have a really awesome guest on the podcast today. Zach, tell everybody kind of who we have today and what they're going to be hearing.
Yeah, in case you heard that voice whisper Hanukkah, we are joined today by the one and only Dr. Travis Stewart, longtime friend, longtime mentor of both Spencer and I. Personally, before we get into his intro, he was probably second or third person I met at Parker that was someone that I saw on campus, and I was like, man, that guy doesn't wear shoes. He's really good at adjusting, super knowledgeable. I need to be around him more often. And so he introduced me into Kairos training culture, guided me through that process, and has been a mentor and a friend ever since. So I'm super excited, as I know Spencer is, to have Dr. Travis Stewart, the owner of MUV Chiropractic and Yoga, now for 3 years. As we were talking offline, he's made it into that 13th percentile of businesses. He graduated from Parker University in August of 2020, as I'm sure we'll talk about that time, as well as started naturally coaching on what he's learned almost a year ago. His practice, MUV Chiropractic and Yoga, serves the general population, and he has the burning desire currently for radical self-discovery. Welcome on to the What Now podcast, Dr. Travis Stewart.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. Thanks for the intro. I think last time, people don't know that what we recorded an episode, I don't know, like 6 months ago, it was you and I, and we realized that it wasn't great quality for the What Now, I don't know, kind of your guys' shtick. And we didn't release that episode, but you gave a similar intro then, and it feels the same today. You know, I'm standing here barefoot and remembering now that Parker University and walking around barefoot on campus and wondering where the heck I would be 4 to 5 years from then. And it's crazy to be sitting here with you guys, with both practice owners. And, you know, I'm at 3 years into practice. Spencer being a year into practice. Zach, are you just over a year?
Yeah, 14 months.
14 months in practice, like already great indicators for success for you guys to have made it that long. And you're in the top few percentile of chiropractors just coming out of chiropractic school and you know, chasing your own aspirational goals. And here we are. So thanks for having me on the podcast today.
Of course, man.
Yeah,
of course.
Super stoked. I feel like it's pretty full circle. I feel like Travis, you and like your group of homies that kind of trailblazed like a path like for Zach and I to really do the same for a lot of people. And that's kind of what we try to do with our podcast too. So your content's been great and your mentorship and friendship has been awesome. And so we're excited. So Travis, why don't you go ahead and give our listeners just a little bit of insight into kind of what is MUV and your journey, like just overall, like after you graduated from school, like how did things kind of unfold for you?
Yeah. So, you know, that all starts several years prior. I met my wife, Sarah, at Stephen F. Austin State University in the kinesiology program, which was obviously the study of movement. And, you know, she was a mover and I was a mover. And we really bonded and connected over movement. We spent most of our time actually early on in our relationship, you know, at the gym or moving or doing things that involved, you know, connecting to our bodies. And whenever I got into chiropractic school, obviously I became the weird guy that didn't wear shoes and had a unique style about me. And I think that kind of plays into that burning desire there, the current burning desire of radical self-discovery. I was just discovering who I was and what made me tick, you know, and what I could really bring to this world. And I realized that a lot of it was in movement and understanding movement and understanding how our bodies evolved over time and how we could continue to maintain these capabilities and functional capacities. And as I went through chiropractic school, I began to understand that was a new opportunity in the marketplace, you know, to really merge with my wife, Sarah, and for her and I to kind of like what you said, trailblaze a new path as a young chiropractor and started MUV Chiropractic and Yoga. I was obviously the chiropractic and she was the yoga. And it's funny now to see how things have evolved because we don't teach very much yoga. You know, I tell people all the time, like the MUV Chiropractic and Yoga is strictly for branding. You know, we're very chiropractic centric. And then we teach functional movement on the back end of that just for reinforcement off the table to help people modify their lifestyle so that they can reinforce the work that we're doing chiropractically. And you know, it's going really well. We came out of school August 6th of 2020. We opened our doors October 5th of 2020. And you know, we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, but we decided to open up in Boulder, Colorado, which is one of 3 locations that we had as options. The other was St. Petersburg, Florida, and then Austin, Texas. And we just felt called to the mountains and ended up here in Boulder. And like I said, planted our flag and opened up during the pandemic. And Colorado happened to be one of the most regulated lockdown states in the country, probably second to California. And, you know, that was something that we weren't really aware of. We weren't really aware of what it would take to start and grow a small business, much less a chiropractic practice, whenever we decided to open up here. And then, you know, we also didn't know what forces we were up against with the regulations that we faced, you know, during the first 2 years of our practice. So I'm very proud to be able to stand here and say that we're still open after 3 years, mainly because, you know, like we said, 87% of small businesses don't make it through those first 3 years of practice, but the disadvantages that we had opening here were immense, you know, and it's something that I'll always look back on and be grateful for. But I also realize now the hardship and the tribulation that we put ourselves through just by making that decision. So we started MUV Chiropractic and Yoga in a small space, which you can do. We had one adjusting table, which was a Thule kind of portable Thule tour, which is said to be portable, but it's not very portable. And then we had we had Sarah with a yoga mat, you know, and that was pretty much it. And we outgrew that space pretty quickly within 6 months and moved into our new location, which now has, you know, an open adjusting area. It's a beautiful space, and we also have a full functional movement area. And we built out our systems on our own, kind of reaching outside of the industry. Like I said, it was something that I had never seen before. It may have been done before. You know, I always say it's never been done before. That's mainly just based on my own perspective and knowledge. But we started reaching outside the industry and finding different systems that we thought would work well and align well with our practice. Started to put it together and just grew over time. You know, it was a lot of learning. It was a lot of implementation and reassessment, and then, you know, relaunching. And 3 years later, we have something super solid that, you know, we can talk about as we get through this podcast, but we've learned how to scale it, which is super important as you grow. And yeah, we're in a really good place moving into 2024. And I couldn't be, you know, more excited to share what I know with you guys today.
That's awesome to hear. One, I mean, being 2 years ahead of Spencer and I, one thing I'm sure both of you also think of quite a bit, and Travis, with you having Theo coming soon, as I forgot to mention on the intro. But Travis is expecting a boy here in the next couple of months. But I'm sure it's something that probably brings a smile on your face, and at the same time keeps you incredibly motivated when you think back on those moments, and you're going to get to share those and tell those stories to Theo as you guys are having an abundant and thriving life one day. But I'm sure that's been a driving factor these last couple of months for you and for Sarah to scale and grow and do all sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, you probably see those that can't see it, that brings a lot of emotion with you just talking about that, you know, changes everything. You know, for the first 2 years, you're in this like place of survivability, and it's just all about you, and it's all about surviving the moment, you know, the day to day, the week to week, the month to month, and then the year to year. And then now, obviously, with our family expanding and having, this is the first time we've told anybody what we're going to name him too. So everybody who listens to this episode is going to know our child's name before most of our family members. But, you know, just having Sarah now growing Theodore inside of her, it just gives me more purpose. And it's it's really cool because I realize, and something I always say is like, I wear my scars like medals. You know, I realize that everything that I've encountered up until this point is going to be lessons and just knowledge, experiential knowledge and wisdom that I'm going to get to pass down to him. And it's changing my perspective on life. It's changing my perspective on chiropractic. It's changing my perspective on business. It's changing my perspective on coaching. And yeah, I'm a new person now because of it. And it's been a lot of work up until this point, but yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
I apologize, but it's also great to see another man express emotions, especially over fatherhood. That's a whole nother podcast that we can get into.
Sure.
And I'm curious, when you did find out, one thing I'm always asking other business owners and other chiropractors is, you know, when you had that kid, because I know for me, like right now, even just getting ready for marriage, there was a switch that was flipped for me in, okay, well, now all my decisions don't just affect me, they're affecting Morgan. And, that's one thing, but to imagine a child is just totally different. So we can kind of get into it. What have you and your team over at Move started to develop or create or refine to really scale and grow Move into what you foresee it being?
It's a good question. I would say it starts with me, and most entrepreneurship does. I'll probably quote Naval Ravikant quite a few times throughout this podcast, just because he's somebody that I really enjoy listening to. And he talks about accountability, and accountability being the ownership of your actions and behaviors, and accountability being a double-edged sword, and accountability is something that it's something where you get to celebrate a lot of the successes and a lot of the triumphs that you have in life and in business because you take ownership of that. A lot of accountability comes from taking risk under your name, and that's something that we've done as entrepreneurs. But the other side of accountability is, taking ownership over all the downfalls and the downsides of everything as well. And I would say that one thing that this has really flipped for me was taking more accountability and ownership as a leader, and really seeing how, my own personal behaviors and actions and choices that I make every single day don't just affect myself and my family, but also affect so many more lives, So I guess changing from this provider mentality to a protector mentality is something that came up for me. And before, I was always going to be the provider based on work ethic. It was like, how hard can I work? If I can outwork everybody, based on my own perception of that, then, the ultimate outcome of success is guaranteed. And now I realize that a lot of times there's sacrifices to be made in that. And unfortunately, those are sacrifices made in relationships. And what I realized I was sacrificing most was like a relationship with myself, which is why, again, just referencing that burning desire of radical self-discovery, it's something that I've began to prioritize, is my own self-discovery and really trying to figure out who I am in this world, not just in my own body and in my own life as the main character syndrome that we all can kind of get swept up into, but who I am and how I can contribute to humanity, And I think as that switch has flipped for me, it's begun to be reflected in our practice. And I've seen that whenever I take accountability and I do take extreme ownership, that's a buzzword, right? A lot of people use that terminology, but a lot of times it's around kind of superficial things. But whenever I truly take accountability for who I am and take extreme ownership for how my behaviors affect the lives of others and how my choices affect the lives of others, it starts to permeate, and I start to see other people in our practice and on our team begin to step up and live a more authentic life themselves. And I've allowed more people to step into their power. Sometimes accountability and ownership isn't being more authoritative as a leader. I think it's like it's stepping back and realizing that the people that you've brought onto your team, as long as the right butts are in the right seats, they have this strength to them as well. And if you can start to let that shine through, then it allows the practice and the organism to grow greater than the sum of its parts. And I think that the philosophy of chiropractic is the philosophy of business and vice versa. You know, it's a living and breathing organism, and it has a nervous system. And I think if you can respect that and you can really view business in that way, then you realize how toxic you can be in some situations. And so that's really what's helped me. You know, the personal development journey that I thought was mainly around achieving financial goals or achieving numerical goals or whatever that looks like early on in business, now has become just a goal and aspiration of self-discovery and allowing that to uplift every person around me. And that's what it's doing.
So, obviously there's like a huge shift that happens as you develop, right? But if you can, like, what would you tell your younger self, like whenever you first opened up in October 5th? Like, we all kind of open up at the same time, like in the year, like I'm in October, Zach was an October open, like your October open. Like, what are you thinking back, like for us, like just a year ago, there's so much has changed, right? So now reflecting 3 years back, like what do you feel like has been some of your biggest shifts, like obviously into self-discovery, but what have you discovered about yourself in these 3 years?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, you know, like we talk about, you're just an accumulation of all of your past experiences. And so I think all of my past experiences were kind of this like lone wolf. Like, you know, I always reference the picture that's over my right shoulder because that's how I always envisioned myself. I left my family and hometown whenever I was 18 years old to go into the military because I was going to make something out of myself. I was going to break that generational curse. And there, I was very self-dependent, and so not a very codependent person. And then got out and put myself through undergraduate school, and then worked really hard and kind of put myself through chiropractic school. And what I began to realize is that I was dependent upon myself. And I think all of the achievements that I had had in my life, I thought that all the achievements that I'd had in my life were based on my own doings, you know? So I think with that comes a sense of arrogance. And it does come with a sense of courage, but it's like blind courage, you know? And so what I've now realized over the past 2.5 years is that I am where I am because of the shoulders I was able to stand on, you know, and it wasn't really as much this like relentless pursuit of excellence that I thought was truly driving me forward and allowing me to achieve all these goals so quickly. But it was the amount of support that I had from those people. I just didn't want to recognize it. And so I think that's really the development that I had is, and I honestly, I think chiropractic school feeds that because it is somewhat of an echo chamber, you know, and you get in this echo chamber, and depending upon the group of people that you surround yourself with and the philosophy that you dive into, sometimes it can provide this sense of unjustified confidence, you know, and then you graduate chiropractic school thinking that you're one thing, and then you get out into the real world and you realize that the real world doesn't care, you know. So then you gotta put your head down, you know, and you gotta go to work, and it's either you sink or you swim. And so I think one thing that I can look back on in the imagery that I use is like we were in a climate controlled environment. Like there was no breeze unless it was coming from people that were kind of speaking in contradiction to what you believed. And all you had to do was stand up to other chiropractors about your own belief system or the philosophy that you believe true and that you held closely to yourself. And then you get into the world and it becomes a wind tunnel, you know. It's not climate controlled. There is no control of the breeze. Like people don't care. And so whenever you get out into that real world, you realize that like if you're gonna, you know, be the person that's hard charging and you're gonna carry the cart and you're gonna pull the cart, you can only do that for so long. And that's something that I did. You know, I pulled this heavy cart and I was head first, head down, just pushing the sled. And you know, I burned out pretty quickly. I experienced some burnout about 18 months into practice because of all of those character traits that, like I said, in business began to be highlighted whether we want them to or not. It's the good character traits and the bad, and that was one that, looking back, it's what got me here, but it's not what's going to take me there, you know. So I think that was the evolution, is the awareness and the acknowledgement of that.
Yeah. And I think, again, there's so much to unpack there. And I think the three of us have a huge, I mean, I know y'all do. I don't want to say it about myself, but I think the three of us know how to burden a heavy weight and take up a big yoke and just kind of put our head down like you were talking about. And if someone's going to get it done, then we're going to be the ones to get it done. And, seeing you again, 2 years ahead, multiple steps ahead, starting to offload and delegate, and not just delegate, because I think sometimes when we think of the word delegate, we think, oh, I'm just going to hand this off to someone. And one thing I've always been inspired by was Howard Behar, who's one of the co-founders and CEOs of Starbucks, always talks about how they had the broom rule, which was one of their like 10 secrets to success, where they would ask, for so long, corporate would just send out the brooms. And then one day some barista was like, well, these brooms suck. I'm just going to bring my own broom. And they're like, oh, well, these brooms are actually more efficient, this and that. And so they've allowed their employees to shine. And that's where the Frappuccino came from. That's where all these fancy, the pink drink, all of that Starbucks is known for came from allowing their employees to actually take the reins and not have corporate try to control everything and keep it to Americanos and your black coffee. And so it's cool to see. And as someone that kind of gets a, not necessarily a first-hand look, but being in making moves and all those type of things, getting to see the evolution of what you're doing and what Ryan's doing, and now what it seems like Emily and Sarah are doing together with pregnancy is super, super cool to see. Not just delegation, but I'm not necessarily sure the right word, but I would guess more amplification of your quote unquote employees to allow them to shine and not just be another version of you.
Yeah, I think it's empowerment. I think you're empowering them to make decisions and to be able to bring things to the table that my own limited perspective and limited visual field may not have either thought of and or could have executed on as well as they could. And I think that comes with that evolution, right? It's like relinquishing that arrogance and that thought that like, well, I know best. Well, I know best. I've always known best. I've always known best. I've always depended upon me. It's always been myself, my decisions, my choices, my work ethic, my execution, my discipline, and all of those things that got me to this point. And then you have to release all of that, and realize that that's what got them here as well. And so empowering them to make decisions and bring projects and push projects forward, it amplifies the vision, it amplifies the brand message, and it amplifies the product. And that's what it's done in our practice. I got Dr. Emily that came on. She started in April 1st of this year. And whenever she came on, we weren't ready for her, but I knew that we would be. And that is a message that I'll continue to share, is that I set everything up in our business and in our practice with the expectation of delayed gratification. And now you hear a lot of people that are talking about that, and they kind of highlight that continuously, but it is an important message to hear as a young entrepreneur. A lot of people, whenever they start to experience a little bit of success in business, they want to like pull it all close to their chest and hold it for themselves. And that's something that we didn't do. We continued to reinvest in others. We continued to reinvest in the message and the brand and the systems. And when Emily came on, that's what that was. We took on an expense that we weren't ready for. And so we were investing in her, and there's an opportunity cost to bring in on associates. A statistic that I heard not too long ago is that an associate doesn't become profitable until 18 months in practice. And it's not just financially profitable. It's also the amount of time, energy, and attention that you have to bring in, that you have to put into onboarding them and bringing them onto the team and making them a part of the team. And if you have a specific level of new patient inflow and patient visits per month, you may not be able to float that profitably. And that's where we were. And so like we've done since we opened Move, we continue to take money out of our pockets and put it back into the business. And so we supported her, financially with money that we hadn't made yet, but also with time, energy, and attention that was taking away from different areas of our life. And because of that, we provided her fertile soil, and she was able to be nurtured and very well nourished, and has now grown into this amazing practitioner that has now brought an entirely new demographic into our office. And we supported her through Webster's, and then we gave her all of the foundations that we teach and the fundamentals that we teach in Making Moves, which has now become like the Making Moves kind of practice growth system. And we gave her all of those fundamentals, and we had like a 3-hour whiteboard session, and we were like, these are all the concepts and the principles and the structure that we need to play within, and here's the container or the structure that you have to give you creative freedom. And with all of those concepts and principles, she was able to create one of the coolest pregnancy onboarding programs that I've ever seen. We haven't released that to the public yet, so nobody else gets to see that except for the people in our office. But it's really freaking cool to see. And now she's almost full. She's at the office right now seeing pregnancy patients. You were talking about Zach being a workaholic, like she is too, because it's not work for her. It's passion. And it's because we were able to set her up with a really strong foundation, but that came through sacrifice through us and sacrifice from the business. And now we're going to reap the benefit of that. And so is she. So I think there's different situations in practice and in business that can be win, win, win. And this is one of those, and it just comes from that basic concept of empowering your people.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty awesome. I thought Spencer had a look on his face like he was ready to chime in. And again, it's cool to see full circle because you mentored us, and then when you left, not I wouldn't necessarily say we mentored Emily, but we got to see her go through school, and now to see her come back around to you is like, man, just a circle of life, and it's cool to see that fresh ecosystem. I do, if it's all right with you, kind of want to move in because you were someone that put me on to Dan Kennedy, and that has forever changed my outlook on marketing and business and all those likes. I actually I'm subscribed to his weekly emails, and I'm curious your thoughts on his opening paragraph, and we'll kind of dive in from there. But his quote goes, "You can't go to the bank on and deposit likes, views, retweets, viral explosions, social media conversations, or brand recognition. Bankers are extremely narrow-minded. They won't even accept vegetables grown in your backyard garden or Bitcoin. They want real money." And so with that said, obviously a lot of the marketing that y'all do is very lead gen based. And so what made you flip into becoming very lead gen focused, and how has that grown your business to where you are today?
I love that paragraph. Firstly, and that's one thing that I learned from him early on was brand awareness versus direct response. And Dan Kennedy, for those of you that don't know, he's like the godfather of marketing. He's amazing at copywriting, but he's a direct response guy. And the only reason that he puts out a marketing message is to compel people to act. And I think that unfortunately, a product of this culture and this social media culture is kind of this prioritization of vanity metrics. And that's what he's talking about, right? Is like the vanity metrics is the likes, the shares, the comments, the stuff that doesn't truly provide any reciprocity to you and your practice. The only thing it does is provide you with cheap dopamine. And it kind of keeps you coming back to that content that does have a higher like viral load to it. Like there's a higher probability of it going viral, but is it being put in front of your prospective clients and the people that can help you grow, build, and scale your practice? And I think it's an unfortunate thing to get swept up in, especially now that we have some chiropractic influencers, who are putting straight adjusting videos and, reaching 50, 60,000 followers and tons of likes and views and shares and all of that. And I think it conveys the wrong message to young chiropractors coming up. Whenever they come out of school, one thing that I see happen quite frequently is that people get caught up in that engagement and they start putting out different pieces of content that do prompt a lot of engagement. And what I've seen is that most of that engagement is either chiropractors alike or their family members, and it's not typically engaging to your prospective clients. And so we kind of figured that out early on, is that that type of content wasn't leading to new patients. And that's really what we want, right? We want new patients, and not because we want to make more money. Obviously, that's a great side effect. That's a great benefit of that. But like, we want to grow our community. I mean, the name of your practice is Empower, and the name of your practice is Within. Like, we want to help liberate people from the shackles of the Western culture. And the more people that we have walking through the front doors of our office, the more people that get to experience that. And so what we found pretty quickly is that if we can create a captivating kind of source of creative and then provide them with some compelling copy and a compelling offer, then that's how we can actually generate those new patient pipelines, which allows us to build our practice. It's the lifeblood of our practice. One thing that is important to understand. And, I know a lot of chiropractors have this resistance to, or they're repulsed by digital marketing. And I think the reason why is because of that TikTok culture, because of that like crack addict culture. And I think the reason why they are so resentful of Facebook marketing or digital marketing is because they don't understand it. Digital marketing it's one of the highest forms of leverage that you can use. So again, quoting Naval Ravikant talks about 4 sources of leverage, and it's either labor, capital, media, or code. And the top of the pyramid being media and code, because it's permissionless. Like, you don't need permission. For labor, you need permission. You need people's willingness to work in your office and do what you're asking them to do, and you have to pay them a wage. For capital, it's the same thing. You need capital in order to distribute that and invest it appropriately. For media and code, you don't need permission for that. And so I'm not a coder, so that's not the form of leverage that I'm looking to use, but I do enjoy using the leverage of media. And what you can do is you can actually buy attention, which we know to be one of the greatest resources that there are. And so if you can use this media buying strategy, which is a form of leverage because we're literally generating new patients while we sleep, and we can create some captivating creative once we buy their eyeballs, and it actually captivates their attention. It holds their attention, which is what we're looking to do. And we can compel them through an irresistible offer, then they become new patients, or at least leads that we need to nurture as Move Chiropractic and Yoga. And that's our time to shine, But yeah, it's kind of crazy to see now how much people are moving more towards like the flashy content that does get them likes, views, and shares. But in reality, like, that's not their people, man. Like, you're getting likes, views, and shares from chiropractors who are not going to feed your practice.
And that's something I know Spencer and I talk a lot, and you made me aware of, right as we were opening. I think you actually got to stop into the practice as I was like mid building one of our Sun Chiro tables, and we got to adjust each other. But it was on that day where you mentioned, you're like, hey, your content, you should not be focused on getting, you should want to be getting likes and views, but double checking and triple checking that your content that you're posting is not to glorify or make your peers happy, right? Like, they're not going to be new patients. They're not going to be the one paying the bills at the end of the day. And it made me realize, like, there's no need to talk about innate intelligence or this philosophy on social media on a regular basis, because that's not the level of which our community that we're serving is, one, wanting to see, and two, cares to see.
Yeah, I remember that actually. And, I think an easy way to sum that up is like, you serve the market, not your message. And I think that whenever we get caught up like serving our message, and we kind of hide behind this like virtuistic frame, and we're only putting out messages in fear of judgment, like, we don't want to be judged by our peers and colleagues, but like, your peers and colleagues aren't going to be the ones that are providing for you and your family, for you and Morgan, and then eventually your own Theo, right? Like, that's not how business works. And so I think, unfortunately, that is a space where we get caught up in as young chiropractors, in the echo chamber. And I think once you can prioritize the vast population and the mass majority of people, that's when we can reach more people, and we can increase that utilization rate. It's too low, man. The utilization rate of chiropractic is too low. And I think it's because, unfortunately, we've been serving our message and not serving the market for a long time. And I think the message is super important, but the philosophy is for us. I think it should be something that you should be deeply rooted in. And there's ways that you can drip feed that to people over time. But another one of Dan Kennedy's greatest one-liners is, you sell them what they want and then give them what they need over time. We know what they need, but we just don't have to spray them with the fire hydrant right now. Let's serve the market. Let's give them something that's captivating to them. Let's give them something that compels them to act on our offer, get them into our home turf, and then we'll drip feed that education over time. And then eventually, I think that's how we can start to expand our net. And if we do that and we band together and stop casting stones, I mean, the reason why the name of my kid is Theodore, because of the famous quote, or the famous speech by Theodore Roosevelt, which is one of my favorites of all time, Man in the Arena. If we can stop casting stones at the men in the arena and realize that they're the ones putting in the work, and they're the ones with the scars, and we allow them to just be themselves and prosper. You know, I think that that's going to allow us to grow and evolve as a profession. And I don't think the profession has evolved very much. And I think it's shown that through the utilization rate in the West.
Yeah, I think one thing I often think about is not like a what would Jesus do, but the chiropractic version. But honestly, like BJ Palmer was one of the best marketers of all time, right? Like, I mean, the dude bought a radio station, which at that time, like, he would have bought Facebook or Twitter, like, like he would have just been like, I'm going to own it. And it's funny because the same guy that would be doing all that marketing is the same guy that a lot of us as chiropractors hide behind and try to use as a scapegoat where, well, he would want us to sell the philosophy. It's like, if you go back and look at his newsletters or, the messaging he was talking about, he was messaging to the sick. And that was his goal, was to bring them into the Palmer clinic to help them, one, get out of being sick, but then he was talking the philosophy to the students. And that's what the green books are all about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his best friend was Albert Hubbard, who owned a printing press, the radio station you were talking about, Wonders of Chiropractic. He wrote a book called Selling Chiropractic. He wrote several books on selling. He was one of the biggest marketing moguls the profession has ever seen. And, I talk about that quite frequently too, but for some reason we tend to cherry pick, we like to cherry pick different one-liners out of different green books and just kind of like use that to back our own boisterous opinions, but we're not truly taking in all that encompassed him, and it was spreading the message to those who need it most. And who needs the message of chiropractic more than the people that are sick and in pain? They're sick and tired of being sick and tired, man. Like, you can message to the top few percent of people who are looking for true evolution of self and looking for nervous system optimization. But that's only going to allow us to evolve as a population so much, like we need to reach down as far as we can and grab the people that are currently swept up in this Western culture. And those are the people that are addicted to pharmaceuticals. It's the people who identify with all of their pain and symptoms because we're in this symptomatic medical system, and the people who are kind of feeding this perpetual system. And who better to do it than us, So that's why we message the way that we do. A lot of people say, like, I don't want to message to pain. I don't want to see people in pain. Like, to me, I'm like, give them all to me. Like, bring every person that is in pain and identifies with some type of symptom or diagnosis that they got from their primary care provider into our office. Those are the people that I want to see. The other people they'll trickle in, man, like the people who are looking to truly optimize and kind of reach that next level of marginal growth. But I want the people that we can provide a radical transformation to. Like, that's really the people that we want to serve. We want to provide radical transformations. And I think if we can do that, it becomes self-perpetuating in our favor, and that's going to trickle down generationally. And those people are going to go back and they're going to be better husbands, better wives, better sisters, better brothers, better uncles, better coworkers, better bosses. And when that happens, I think that we start to see the world change for the better, And so that's really why I talk about messaging the way that I do. It's not because I want to throw stones at like the philosophy of chiropractic or break down chiropractors' need to share the philosophy of chiropractic. It's because I think those who need to be served most are the people that wouldn't understand that. The people who wouldn't even be compelled by that, like the symptom, the experience that they're having right now is too distracting. It's nociception, it's chaos in their brain and their nervous system, and they'll never look past it. And so if we can give them what they want, which is just a little bit of relief, just a little bit of breathing room, and then sell them what they want, sell them what they need over time, give them what they need over time, I think that's how we serve the masses. Spencer, it looked like you had something. Do you want to chime in?
Dude, I'm just listening, man, and I'm just really focused on kind of listening to the things that you're not saying, right? Because as we develop and as we grow as people and as practitioners and entrepreneurs, there's this newfound tone that's like going to be layered in underneath your words, right? And like that's really what I'm listening for. Because really my question is, when you first opened up, this is obviously not how you think, right? This is not what startup mode, what now mode Travis is, right? And that's kind of like who we speak to. And so we bring all these people on, and I know as students, like we're so easy to just get wrapped up in other people's success and be like, oh, I wish that I could get there. I wish that I could do that. I wish. But we never actually dream enough ourselves so we can actually go and chase that vision. So what are some of the things that really, like, what was the turning point for you to go down to this path where you really are clarified, like in your message and in your branding?
I think it was experience. I think Dr. Tim the other day on my podcast, we pulled a clip from it, and he was talking about how you never truly understand the essence of chiropractic until it happens in your hands. And I think that, whenever I came out from the student, like, not casting stones at students, right? Like we're just a makeup of our environment. And like, that's the environment that we were bred and nurtured in. And whenever I came out, I did have, like what you're talking about. I think you're probably referencing an underlying tone that I have now, in contrast to the tone that I had before, and or maybe you were just making a general statement. But I think that it was all based on experience, and allowing myself to see everything for what it is, and not through what I wanted it to be. I think once I got into practice and I began to have an honest assessment of who I was, what I was doing, and what we were serving chiropractically, it allowed me to change my purpose and my mentality around everything that I do. So I guess, are you asking for like advice here, like for
No, I'm
students?
just asking for
Okay.
like your experience, just like your kind of reflection, right? Like if you can write a journal note into yourself and you look back and you're like, today is the day, like I finally, now I understand, right? There's these moments in time like where we like can flip that switch, right? And Zach and I in our last episode, we talked about momentum, where sometimes like things just change and you're like, today is the day I make a change. And people are like, oh, I need to take this massive action, I need to move in the other way. But literally what we were talking about is the way you get a radical shift is by really unpacking like what has flipped the switch in you and consistently taking action over time. And that's how you end up in a totally different place. That's how you end up as a different person and a different practice bracket, as whatever you want it to be. And that's where you get radical shift, is by taking massive action consistently. And so my question really is just like, what was that flip for you? And what are some of those big actions that you took when you actually had this realization that you're like, okay, we need to change our messaging. We need to change the way that we spread our message. We need to, instead of doing, direct reply and stuff, like how do we get our brand out like that? Like walk me through that journey of Travis 6 months in, and how you started developing like the making moves, like business systems, because out of necessity, really.
Yeah. Well, to just piggyback on, I'll two-part answer here. The first part is just a statement on your comment. I think massive action is relative, right? Like massive action is an output, and unfortunately, success is not like a one-to-one game. Like massive output consistently leads to incremental change over time, and that is the path to success. That is the path to the most exponential growth over time. But in the beginning, it doesn't look like growth. It actually increases friction, and so it's really taking massive action every day without the need for reciprocation or the reflection in your perceived success metrics. So that's one thing that I would like to share, is that the massive action that you're taking today is something that you're going to see harvested 3 years from now. And I
Yep.
think that's what I'm experiencing now, is being over 3 years in practice now. What I'm beginning to see is that everything in business, just like everything in life, just like everything in personal development, just like healing, takes time. And so all of the shifts that we made, although it may have felt like massive action in the moment because it was this like massively driven output from me, and like this high energy pursuit, was actually just like chipping away. It was just like slow little mindful movements every single day in the direction of the light, right? Like you have your North Star, you have your compass, and you stay the course, and you take that massive action every day, and you chop wood and you carry water. And then eventually you look back and you're able to see all the bricks that you laid, and you're able to see this magnificent road that you built whenever it was slightly unintentional. Like you're just focused on laying one brick today. like lay the brick. You're kind of finicking with the brick and you're trying to lay it perfectly. And then the next day you're like laying the next brick and you're finicking, and it's like you're hyper focused on that one brick and you want to lay it perfectly. And like this brick means everything to you today. And then you look back, 3 years from now, and you realize all the bricks that you laid, and you were able to unravel or develop this thing organically. And I think that's where I am now. It's like I'm seeing now that the evolution and the growth and the prosperity that we're going to experience in this practice was not made from one decision. It was not made from like one New Year's resolution where I'm like, this year I'm going to take massive action and I'm going to do all these things so that I can scale my practice and get us up to $70,000 a month. It was chipping away every single day, but staying the course. And I think the way that you stay the course is through that honest reflection, because the course corrections happened all the time. If it wasn't daily, it was weekly, right? And it was based on my learning. Like who I am today is not the person that I was then, and it's because of the experiences that I've had over the past 2.5 years. And so, if you're not course correcting and you're not slightly altering your trajectory based on the new person, the new organism that you've become, then I don't think we're truly growing. And so, I think a lot of this was just based in, again, dissolving the ego, like relinquishing my need to be right. Like, Alex Hormozy, which everybody, has kind of like blown up and kind of latched onto over the past few years. Like he says this one line quote quite frequently: do you want to be right or do you want to be rich? Do you want to be right or do you want to be rich? And I think once I relinquished my need to be right, I became more rich, and it wasn't just financial richness, obviously, but it was just rich in joy and gratitude for what we've built and what we've created here. Whereas whenever you first start off, it's like you're comparing yourself to these icons that you pedestalize. And I think that if you're looking for like one moment where I had a major shift, it was when I realized that the person that I had pedestalized and the person that I had learned from and been mentored by and that I'd believed in and trusted and decided that I want to be just like that person, when the curtain was pulled back and I realized that person wasn't who I thought they were. And it depedestalized that person and it destabilized me. And so that's when I realized that we're all just fucking human beings, man, doing our best. And my perception and the narrative that I write, the construct that I create about somebody and what they have and what they've achieved and all of these things, like if I begin to latch onto that and create this discrepancy or this gap between where I am and where they are, I can never be truly happy in the now, And also I can't be as authentic in my business and in my practice. And once I think I experienced that and the Band-Aid was ripped off and there was salt poured in my wound, and it took me several months to process that and kind of get past that, because I felt so misled, I felt so misguided. And because of that, I felt harmed. Once I was able to process that and come out the other side, that's when things shifted for me, So if I could give any piece of advice to any of the students, it would be kind of like led by your question. It's like, don't create any type of icons or pedestalization of anybody in this profession or in your life, and just realize that, first off, what you see and what you believe is only what they want you to see and believe, first and foremost. Second of all, like, you're right where you need to be. And that doesn't mean that you should take your foot off the gas pedal, but it does mean you should give yourself some grace and realize that, like, you fought hard to get where you are. And that if you can be the best version of you and you can truly, find your own path to self-discovery, there's nobody that can compete with that, because there is no competition in authenticity. And if you can become the best version of you, and then your practice and your business becomes an extension of who you are, there's no competition in the marketplace. There's nobody that can do you the way that you can. They may copy or try to emulate, but honestly, that's a compliment, So that was long-winded, but I think I got my point across.
Yeah, I think it's so true. There's so many people that we look up to and say, like, oh, I want to be just like them. I just want to be just like them. And we don't really see the skeletons in everybody's closet because we don't put their clothes on in the morning, right? And so they're the things that, we have to say, like, oh, what do we want to be in? I always say, like, dude, I'm not competitive with other people. Like I'm competitive with myself because
Yep.
I know the amount of effort that I can put forward to, but I really could care less if people are, lifting more weights than me, doing all those things. I like accountability from other people who have similar goals for me, but I don't really have any sort of like construct around like, oh, like this person is better than me, so I need to beat them just because I think I'm better than them. But I know that what my best is where I can really tap into. And so I love to be in conversations with people like you, like with Zach, like with all the people who are in our circle who have been on our podcast, because when people are farther away or farther ahead down the road than you, they really just kind of tell you like, hey, this is what the path that you're walking down. And so you can proverbially stand on their shoulders, like you were saying, to get to the life that you want. But sometimes the road forks. And so we can just, split off in other ways. And that's awesome. And
Yeah.
so
And
that's kind
one
of
thing I
what
was,
I've just been digesting from all the things that you've been saying.
yeah, one thing I'll say in response to you is you said that, you like to have accountability from people that have similar goals as you. And I'll go one further than that and say accountability from people that have similar goals for you. And,
Right.
I think that's important, because that's something that I experienced in that same situation, was that this person had lesser goals for me than I had for myself. And a lot of it was kind of constrained and limiting language around what I could create and how fast I could create it and what I needed to be providing and how fast I could provide it. And when I look back, I realized that everybody has a motive, and so just like understanding that too is like, not everybody who you think wants you to win truly wants you to win.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's important too, because that trickles down into your team, right? Like I don't ever even like it feels weird for me to use the word employees because yes, I technically employ them. Like I'm the one that pays their wage, but that's my team, right? Like those are the people, they carry just as much weight as me. And but that trickles down, right? Because like when you're the one that like holds the vision, when you're the one that has the map and not necessarily the wheel on the boat, then I mean that trickles down everywhere else. And so you have to have people on your team that want, care, and contribute just as much as you can, right? And you have to give them the freedom as the one that kind of holds the container like for your practice, to give them the space to move in that space, and I think it's just as important for us to create that environment for the people who entrust us with their care, right? Because there's so many people that would say like, oh, you're going to be in this lane and all those things. And that's why my practice is Empower Chiropractic, is because we empower people to make the choice that they want, right? To give them the resources to be naturally stronger and more confident in claiming their natural rights, doing the things that they want to. And so I just think it's awesome, like all the things that you're doing, and it's very inspiring and motivating to just hear down the road. You've gained a massive amount of wisdom. I think since we've had a long chat, and I'm very honored to know you and very proud to be a part of your journey.
Thanks, Spencer.
Yeah. And then I'm reminded, I think I don't know if I've shared with both of you, but one book I'm currently reading that's phenomenal and would definitely recommend, and it came from Ryan Ryder, is Purpose Driven Church by Rick Warren, who built arguably one of the biggest non-denominational churches. And Dan Kennedy is even quoted by saying it's the best business book of all time. And he talks a lot about, in basically the first two chapters, about you cannot take everything he's about to share about his own church and apply it to your church, and it's going to work. And I think that's something you do a really great job of illustrating in our conversations, is like, hey, this is what's worked for us. And I think that's a really important thing to find in a mentor or a coach, is not someone that says you have to do it this way and it's the only way to do it, but find someone that's going to come alongside you and be like, hey, this is what worked for us, you can try it. But I'm also going to help you with my wisdom and my knowledge, figure out what will work for you, because what works in Boulder won't necessarily work in Colleyville. Two very different communities, right? And you've been around Hearst, Hearst, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's very different than a lot of people in Boulder. Not in like a bad or good way, but just they're different. And so you can't take what's working somewhere and try to apply the very exact thing to your practice and expect it to work and then get frustrated when it doesn't. But one thing I do want to ask is, yes, you guys have done a great job with Facebook and social media marketing and lead gen in that sense, but also knowing some of the backstory, that's not all you guys do. And going back over how you were talking about those 3 years chopping wood, and really building those bricks. What are some of the bricks that you've laid over the last 3 years that are boring or aren't sexy or aren't appealing to necessarily that first year, second year entrepreneur that a lot of times we have an aversion to? What are some of those things that y'all do on a weekly and monthly basis that you've now seen reap
Yeah,
immense
hold that
benefits?
thought because this is actually the same question that I had. So to kind of sum it up, what are like three, because we try to give people like tangible steps that they can walk away from the episode for, because you can get a lot of motivation and inspiration and get very charged up from a lot of podcasts and stuff, but we like to give tangible steps. So what are three things that people can do right now that matter the most that a lot of people aren't looking at?
That's
What are the
good.
three biggest moves?
So I'll try to answer both of them together. And so to maybe I'll intertwine the takeaways into the answer of Zach's question. So the things that we've done that have been boring, that have been like brick by brick, laid over time. I mean, I know we talk about a lot about digital marketing, so I think you were trying to refrain me from going down that path, because one thing we and I'll reiterate here is like we have a multifaceted lead generation system.
Mm-hmm.
That is one creek to our river, right? Like that is one creek, but it is one of the most leverageable creeks, and it's something that can be replicated and emulated no matter where you are. I would say another of our main lead generation sources is going to be screening events. So to give one takeaway, it is to be able to communicate in very simplistic terms a problem that someone may be experiencing right now, and be able to bridge the gap between where they are, where they want to be, offering you as the solution, and being able to do that in a micro form, which would be in like a screening scenario, which is where they come up, they don't know you from Adam. There is no brand awareness. There's no recognition. You have your magnet. So we have kind of a four step system where we do have like a magnet or an attraction. So we typically, depending upon the event that we do, we try to have something that is appropriate for that event. So let's say we are using posture, which is something that we do frequently, but we also use like massage gun sessions every now and then. And again, it's because I've relinquished my need for ego to make decisions for me. So we bring people over with a free massage gun session, and in that we have them fill out a questionnaire. In that questionnaire, they give us information about themselves. Whenever we get them back to the table, I'm going to start asking questions about the information that they gave us on the sheet. So the pain points, the symptoms, the experiences or challenges that they're having. During that conversation, I'm trying to create a gap between where they are, which is their current experience of symptoms or challenges, and where they could be, which is the solution to the transformation that we offer in our office. And then throughout that conversation, I'm navigating it appropriately based on who they are and what they do for work and their common interests. Typically on the paper, we put occupation. So one thing that I would definitely try to hone in on is an understanding of multiple or a large amount of occupations or professions. So depending upon what people do for work, typically kind of reflects their interests and their understanding of the world around them. So let's say that someone is a software engineer. If they have an issue in, a knot currently behind their scapula, then I can provide them information about how that's a software issue, not a hardware issue. So we have the communication superhighway that comes from the brain down the brainstem into the spinal cord and the spinal nerves that come out, innervate and supply all of the muscular system, but also all of the organs and tissue cells in the body. A lot of times we overlook that. So what you're telling me right now is that you have an issue in a tissue. And so that issue in the tissue is something that you've been trying to get out with massage or your Theracane or, acupuncture or whatever you've been trying to do. You're going straight at the local injury site. But what we have failed to understand is that that's a software-based issue. That's a response by the body, an intelligent response by the body of an overstressed tissue. So because of the structural adaptation that your body has had based on the constant inputs from sitting at a desk with your head forward and the postural adaptations that now your spine has undergone, it's increased the amount of stress that that tissue has been under for said amount of time. Now that tissue is starting to create this kind of like central torsional pattern, what you're calling a trigger point. And yeah, it has become the site that is the most important to you because it's the site that's painful and it's palpable by your hand. But what you don't understand is that that software issue that is currently showing up in that tissue is also an issue that's going undetected by other areas of your body. And so when we have a hardware issue that we tend to kind of highlight or illuminate, what we first need to look at is the cause of that hardware issue, which would be the software hardware interface. And so whenever you can start to kind of bridge the gap between what they currently know and how they see the world with what you offer as a chiropractor, I think that allows it to be way more digestible by the person on the table. And you can do that for plumbers, you can do it for firemen, you can do it for teachers, for librarians, like it doesn't matter.
Huge.
So that was a long-winded way of saying, like, learn to form fit your message to the candidate, to the prospect. And again, you want to serve the moment. Don't serve your message, right? And in that moment, I know you got something. In that moment, like that person is the most important person in your world. And they don't know chiropractic. And they probably don't know neurology. And they don't know biology. And they don't know physiology. But they know what they know. And if they know software, if they know electricity, then speak to the software and the electricity. And I think what we've seen from that is, I mean, the screening events that we go to now, because we have created a lot of scripts and a lot of processes that we put around it. Like, I mean, you can build a $500,000 a year practice strictly by doing screening events if you have a screening event a month.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that Zach and I talk about a lot is like one of my superpowers is just I can relate anything to chiropractic is because I've been coining it like you walk backwards into the conversation. So a lot of people say like, "Oh, I'm a chiropractor and I help you with this." But you kind of start it and you say like, "Oh, I help you with this." And they're like, "Oh, how do you do that?" And you're like, "Well, I'm a chiropractor." Like you offer them the solution to what they need. So,
Yeah, and I think you can go even a step further back there and like ask them about them.
Yeah,
You know, it's like
exactly.
I'll tell you about me in a few moments. Like, what do you do? You know, who are
Mhm.
you? You know, what makes you you, and what are you currently experiencing that I may be able to help you with?
yep.
And you know, typically people, as you guys know, and every other chiropractic student or chiropractor that's listening to this podcast, once you tell somebody that you're a chiropractor, like they tell you about their problems, they just kind of
Yep.
like uncore. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be at a bar, you could be at a
Mhm.
family
Yeah,
event, like
it was just Christmas. It happened.
yep.
Yeah, for all of us.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know.
So, you know, you ask them about them, collect a little bit of information and data about who they are and how they see the world, and then you can transition into the conversation about chiropractic.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think one
The
thing I've taken away is, it's much more important to be interested than interesting, right? And I think we can get caught up with because we understand how interesting chiropractic really is, especially from a philosophical level, but we can also really quickly lose interest in others.
yeah.
And going back to Spencer's question is, that screening was one, and you've obviously developed a huge framework around it. Do you have two or three bricks that you've also been laying for the last several years that you're now just seeing the fruit?
Outside of screening events,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I would say fulfillment is one of them. You know, so like just delivering our product inside the office and
You're really
really
good at it.
prioritizing, yeah, really prioritizing the client experience. And that doesn't just look like elite level adjusting skill. You know,
Right.
that's a prerequisite. That's a given. Like if you're not working on your adjusting skills and you're crossing the stage as an unconfident chiropractor, like you got some work to do. Like that should be the least of your worries once you
Isn't
start to get your hands on people.
not to interrupt, but isn't it, the more I've kind of stepped out of it, out of the bubble, if you will, it's kind of interesting how we do try to market, some of us try to market like high level chiropractic care when the public expects that, right? That's like low bar entries. Like you should be delivering high chiropractic care. But unfortunately, we've seen adjusting isn't nearly uh, trained as it should be. But to me, it's always funny to kind of think back on like imagine any other business being like, yeah, well, we deliver the best, we deliver high level whatever. And it's like, well, shouldn't that be like the expectation? Like
Yeah,
any
high
restaurant?
quality cheeseburgers.
Yeah. It's like we should,
I would hope so.
yeah, like hopefully I don't get food poisoning.
If you're selling cheeseburgers, they better be high quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the public just doesn't know, right?
Yeah.
Like they have no clue that there's like a skill discrepancy between chiropractors.
Hmm.
They don't know the difference between the joint and you, and not to like, say anything about the joint. Like I think it's a great opportunity for chiropractic to expand its reach, but like they don't know the difference between what they may pay $19 for versus what they're paying over $70 per visit for.
Hmm.
And so like you basing kind of like your price to value ratio on your skill set,
Right.
it's all
Right.
in like the perception of value of the prospect. So they don't perceive that as ultimately valuable. Like that they go into the joint and the person's using a lot of manipulative force and getting loads of cavitations in their spine. Like they see that as a great
And
product.
they walk out feeling good and they're open 7 days a week. And
Yeah,
so,
exactly. And
and
you
it's cheaper.
pay,
Wow.
yeah, you pay whatever it is. I don't know, $39 a month. I don't, it's a very low price point, which again, like I love that a lot of people have access to it if they can't afford it. But that's not what we do in our office. And so, yeah, I think learning how to, I guess this would be a brick for sure, is learning how to convey value to the prospect based on your current offering and services. And that's something that I think is massively important for young chiropractors, is because when you are a student, you're looking for people to adjust. You're trying to grab anyone that'll let them put their hands on you
Yeah.
and adjust them. And so not only are you doing it for free, but in some instances you would pay them to let you adjust them, right? So
Yep, very true.
it's a complete 180-degree shift. And so you got to get good at asking people for money for the services that you're offering, but you also have to get good at stacking the amount of perceived value in the eye of the prospect for what you're actually going to deliver. And one way that I like to speak to that is that you sell the transformation and not the service. And that's something that I got from Russell Brunson, and it's something that like really struck a chord in me early on in practice, is that we're not selling them an event, right? Like chiropractic isn't an event, it's a process, right? So like we're selling them the process. We're selling them the transformation on the other side of that process. We're actually not selling them the process. We're selling them the ultimate outcome that they're looking to achieve. And although that's arbitrary, right? Like especially us knowing what chiropractic can provide, I think Heidi Havoc came out the other day and talked about that the effects of chiropractic are compounding, and that
Mhm.
the effects of chiropractic actually get better over time. So after you've been under chiropractic care for 12 months plus, that's when you start to experience like the total value of continuous chiropractic care. And so, although in 90 days, we know that they're not going to achieve that. Obviously, we can't, compress
Can't
12
speed them
months
up.
into
Yeah.
90 days. It's time. It's time specific, time focused. But what you can do is you can provide them kind of a desired outcome and a defined end to your program. That way, during that 90-day process, you have enough time to drip feed them that education that becomes kind of I don't know, like the keystone in actually becoming a continuous chiropractic client. And that's what we want for people. We want it to be a lifestyle and a wellness regimen. So that would be second point, is if you haven't been to a Making Move seminar and you want to better understand that, I'll go ahead and drop this here. We're actually about to take most of our content that we used to have behind a paywall where people had to pay for it, and we're going to put it out for free. And so we're creating a current course in school right now, and we're going to give all of it away. So if you are a young doctor and you want to learn a little bit more about this, then you can go get into that, what we're going to call the Chiro Success Collective. And it's going to be a little community where we're going to have monthly collaboration calls and then just continue to mastermind through things that could be valuable for young chiropractors. And then for students, what we want to do is make it slightly exclusive for students. So if you want to get in as a student, then we want the requisite to entry to be coming to a Making Move seminar, so that you actually understand the value of what you're receiving, so that it becomes useful to you. So if you've been to a Making Move seminar as as a student, you will be receiving access to that. If you're a young doctor and want to get involved, we're going to post, I'll have you guys post a link in the show notes and they can go through that. But we talk a lot about, taking all of your services and your products and whatever you want to provide as a chiropractor, because there are so many different unique expressions in chiropractic. And like I said, I want it to be an extension of the authentic version of you. And so that may not look like the extension of the authentic version of Zach or Spencer, but it looks like you. And so providing you with the concepts and the principles that you can take to actually formulate your own value proposition to the people that you want to serve. And then when you're able to stack that value and you can convey it in a super concise and compelling way, that's how we can convert prospects into chiropractic clients and grow our practice over time.
And, as we're wrapping up here, one, this has been a complete honor and really a lot of fun to record with you and kind of get to unpack just an hour of the Travis Stewart brain and all that entails. But as a testimonial, I was a client of Making Moves. And I, had the ability to host the seminar back in February of last year and go through the course once and now going back through again. And if someone is on the fence, I couldn't recommend it enough. One, it will challenge you. And I think as entrepreneurs, that's exactly what we need, especially if you are young in practice, because a lot of the concepts will challenge your beliefs in a good way. And number two, it also, 2x'd our business in the span of 6 months, and not just from a monetary standpoint, but it's also 10x'd our creativity and our viewpoint and the way in which we operate on so many different facets. So I highly recommend one, getting on the free course. That's amazing that you're offering that. And for any of the courses that Travis and Ryan and that whole crew drop, I couldn't recommend it enough, Travis.
Yeah. Thanks, Zach. I see Spencer. I see you. You got a jet, got another call. And then I'll just drop very lastly here. Like, obviously we didn't get to it, but we do have the Chiro Ads Academy, which is a new Facebook Ads Academy that we just started. We just launched at the beginning of last month, which has been a huge success. People are literally crushing it in practice with the Facebook ads, but it's not just learning how to Facebook ad, it's learning how to market as a whole. So if that's something that you're interested in and you're a DC and you want to elevate your Facebook marketing or grow or scale your practice, like, we'll leave the link down in the show notes so people can get more information on that too.
Yeah.
Well, man, Travis, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and for pouring into us today, but not only today, but just in the past. You've been such a huge pivotal point in our journey, and so we really appreciate it. And we're really glad to know you and be able to chat with you. And we look forward to cheering you on and having you on again so we can continue to jam out.
Yeah, I feel like we just scratched the surface.
Very much so. Very much so.
Totally. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. I'll just let everybody know where I am. You can find Making Moves _ it's MUVS, Making Moves _ biz for Chiros. That's the podcast that I have as well, which is a super cool resource. And then at Travis _ the chiropractor. So if you guys want to find me on social media, that's where it's at.
Thanks, Travis. Look forward to be a part 2.
Yeah.
Thanks, Travis. Thanks for being a guest on the What Now podcast, man. Peace.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the What Now podcast. If you took something valuable away, feel free to share it with a friend, post it on your socials, or give us a 5-star review. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.